Hi, everybody. It's really, really good to be here in this really exciting event. I'm very excited by all the speakers here. So we're going to talk about food today, about future of food, and what our plate will look like 10 or even 20 or even 10 years from now. My story starts in the supermarket. I was a young chef just out of the Cordon Bleu Paris cooking school, and I moved to Washington, D.C. And one of the first things I wanted to make was such a French cliché. What do you think? Chocolate mousse. And I went to the local supermarket. This is a true story. It was about 10 years ago. And I looked for, the ingredients that I needed for the chocolate mousse. And guess what? I couldn't find anything that I needed. I couldn't find chocolate that actually had cocoa in it. I couldn't find cream that was non-fat that I could make whipped cream out of. And you know this commercial, you wouldn't believe it's not real butter? It wasn't real butter. So I went home with an empty grocery bag, being very sad. And on the way home, I had a sort of an epiphany of how the industrialization process of our food system got us so disconnected with the source of food. Now, this is really easy to realize or to think about when you think about McDonald's, right? McDonald's meal, or fast foods, or processed foods. But it happens even when we think about ingredients like chocolate, like cream, like butter. It even applies when we think about the most natural and healthy thing, vegetables and fruit, right? I love the stand, the free stand outside. It's perfect with all the carrots. Think about it for a second. When you go to a supermarket today and you pick up an apple or a tomato off the shelf, what actually do you know about it, about this fruit or vegetable? Let's think. You don't know if it was grown here in Hungary, if it's imported or not. You don't know who grew it, who is the farmer. You don't know how he grew it. Did he use pesticides? Was it modified? Was it covered with wax? You have no idea. You don't know when it was picked. You don't know how long it's been being in transportation, how long it's been sitting in refrigeration. And you don't know how long it's been sitting on the shelf, right? And with all these unknown questions, you take the apple or the fruit and we put it into our bodies, the most intimate thing. That's a bit weird. Okay, so let's go back to DC for a second. I was a chef, I was a foodie, and I needed a new place to shop after the sad experience in the supermarket with all the substitutes. And that's how I found the local farmers market. And that was the place where I just, fell in love with produce, with wonderful squashes and apples and cheese, and I could meet the farmers, the cheesemaker. They could tell me all about how they made the cheese, how they grew the vegetables, so I could reconnect to the source of food. They could tell me all about it. It tastes wonderful. Everything was fresh. There was no middleman, so it's also a fair consumerism, where all your money goes directly to the farmer. And everything is seasonal, so it changes every week or two, and everything is local. We hear a lot. Let's pause just for a second about local, because I think it became sort of like a buzzword. But why is it important that what we eat will be local, that fruits and vegetables will be local? It's because, and I don't think it's a common knowledge, that most of the fruits and vegetables today, and I'm talking about 80% globally of the fruits and vegetables, are being imported and exported. These are unbelievable quantities of fruits and vegetables, which are pretty gentle when you think about it. And in order for those fruits and vegetables to go through this journey, think about it, this long journey of transportation and refrigeration, and at the end up at the shelf looking all fabulous, gorgeous, and flawless like we're used to on the supermarket shelf, it must be harvested early, so it doesn't ripen naturally. And in order for it to go this journey, it must be modified. And today, vegetables and fruit are being modified in many different ways. It can be by gas, it can be with wax, many, many ways. And in this process, you can understand by yourself that the things that are important are the durance of the fruits and vegetables in this journey, in this cold chain, and the aesthetics, how it looks like at the end. It's less about nutritional value. It's even less about taste. So now you realize why, when I came back to Israel from DC, I had to start to open the first farmers market in Israel. It was very weird to me that it was the first market in Israel because we have so many farmers. And since then, as she said, we have 5 more farmers markets across Israel and an indoor market. And over 100 farmers and small-scale producers of cheese, of olive oil, of wine, of confiserie, of many, many specialized artisanal producers in our market. So a farmer's market is a low-tech, right? It's low-tech. It's a low-tech, traditional solution to tackle problems like the one we just mentioned of small-scale producers, of fair trade, of biodiversity, of many kinds of varieties. We have in our market green tomatoes and white eggplants and purple potatoes. We're all about varieties. But we can't talk about our food system today and the future of our food system without mentioning, I think, the biggest burning problems that our future holds. And this is problems now, in the present, and they're global. I'm talking about hunger, I'm talking about obesity, and food waste. I want to give you just a few numbers so we will feel what we're talking about. So, more than 2 billion people today in the world are considered to be food insecure. That means different levels of hunger. Okay? 1.4 billion tons of food is being wasted every year globally. Just to put it in perspective, this is about 1/3 of all the food that is being produced. And to end this little portion of numbers, 2/3 of all Americans are obese. Okay, so what do we do with these crazy numbers, right? Crazy, crazy numbers. First of all, have no mistake, all this wasted food could feed all the hungry people twice. So when we talk about the future of farming, the future of our food system, and how we need to produce more food because there is a population growth and all the hungry people, we have another issue of distribution. And this is one challenge. The distribution challenge is one challenge that we have to face. Another thing, when we think about hunger and obesity, they seem to us like 2 opposite problems, right? We have a hungry person, and he's probably very thin, and we have an obese person that eats too much, and he's so fat. But actually, hunger and obesity are reflections of, they're mirroring the same problem, which is poverty, which is what happens to our food system when the social economical gaps get wider. As long as they're getting wider, and they are, those 2 phenomena will just get more and more the shelf as well, because of course they want to encourage us to buy more. Another thing, and that's something that is getting a bit of awareness in Europe, in France, is the ugly vegetables. Did you hear about it? So the supermarket has an aesthetic criteria. So ugly vegetables, and by ugly I mean, for me, there are ugly ducklings, but I mean crooked eggplants or crooked potatoes will not fit the supermarket model of the same shape vegetable, the same shape fruit. So those ugly vegetables are being wasted, staying on the ground as well. So now in France, there's a wonderful campaign, you should look it up, for special sections in supermarket for the ugly vegetables. Of course, they cost less. So that's very creative and sustainable thinking. So how do we tackle these issues? When I did my master's in business, I was fortunate enough to go to San Diego to an economic sustainable conference. And I was sure I will be the low-tech entrepreneur that is all about food, and I will be very different. And I was amazed to discover a whole new world of startups that are doing food tech and agri-tech ventures that try to answer those problems exactly. So how will our plate look like 10 years from now? I'll give you a few examples. I think one thing is that we will grow much more of our food, of our fruits and vegetables, ourselves. And by that, I don't mean that I don't mean the people who have a garden, who live in a farm. No, I'm talking about in the cities, in a one-bedroom apartment, on the balcony, on the rooftop, on skyscrapers vertically. I'm talking about soil-less agriculture. Some call it hydroponics. And there are so many startups that basically are doing this today in the world. And it enables you to grow with no soil. So we have a land crisis as well, and we can grow fruits and vegetables with no soil, as I said, also vertically. And the water is being recycled. So it's very sustainable. And it gets us back to the beginning of reconnecting with the source of food. When you grow it yourself, and you eat what you grew, and you know it's super clean. I can tell you most of the lettuces, actually all of the lettuces today in my market are hydroponic. And we have about 8 varieties of lettuce. So that's one thing that I see in our future. Another thing, and after being in Hungary for 2 days, I know you are meat eaters, right? You're a serious meat eater, so that will hurt a little bit. You know, the ecological implications of growing industrial meat are horrible. It's a whole other lecture. But also, the meat prices are going so high. We need to find, globally, the future protein, the new protein. And all the startups today, all over the world, found a sustainable protein that comes from, you heard about it, right? From insects, from flies, from crickets. Are you shocked? Are you okay? Are you with me? I said crickets, I said insects, I said flies. And they're much more sustainable to grow. It sounds weird, but think about Asia, about their diet. And I see already startups that are doing processed foods, like protein bars, based on insects. Or processed food like, frozen patties, from the supermarket, based on insects. And that could be a very sustainable and very revolutionary future protein. Also, of course, we can't ignore smartphones. And smartphones haven't yet got into our food future in a really revolutionary way. But now there are many startups across the world who are trying. I think the competition is who will be the standard app that you can go back to to the supermarket again, the beginning of the talk. You can we'll be able to go with our smartphone, scan the vegetable or fruit, and get all the information we just talked about. We'll get to know where it was grown, who is the farmer, how he grew it, nutritional value, calories, the whole thing. So to sum up, it went much faster than I thought. I really believe to tackle our food system today and the burning issues, and these are burning issues, we need to go both slow food and fast. We need to go both high-tech and low-tech. I think we must have communal, educational solutions like farmers market, like taste education, as well as to take technology and tackle those issues in the most sustainable way. And I think there's a lot of room for action, both as conscious consumers and both as entrepreneurs. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
Hello.
Do you want some water too?
No, I just had some. Thank you very much. I was listening, hearing you talking about insects, and I had to.
You got hungry?
Yeah, the only insects I like are prawns and shrimps.
But it's all cultural, right?
It's all in the head. It's all in the head.
Yes.
That's true. I think these are very, very important topics. I fully understand, and I think overproduction is a key factor. And I love these topics. But what I would love to talk about with you a little bit more is about specifically the farmers market, because I think we have a lot to learn there, and it's maybe the quickest and most immediate solution to this whole food challenge and food situation. And what I would love to understand is how you get your farmers from producing to selling. How do you make them sit in their car and drive for 4 hours and then sell on the market?
So the honest answer is that not everybody is up for that. In the beginning, when I started the market, it was almost 10 years ago, I was a bit naive, and I thought, it's all about the produce. If I find a farmer and he has the most perfect eggplants, he has to be in the market. And today I know it's not only about what he grows, but also about the personality. And not all farmers are cut out for... You have to love it. You have to find farmers who would love the interaction with the client, who would love to bring their kids and their grandkids, who would love to be there. And for some of them who want to be a part of the market, but they won't come because they're too shy, of course they can bring a worker from the farm or one of their kids. For me, the criteria is that it's someone who knows the farming process. He can tell you about the variety, about the farm, where it is, because part of what is so special about a farmer's market is that someone can explain to you. It's not a vendor. It's not someone you will ask him, so what do I do with this white eggplant? And he will tell you, I don't know. You need someone who will know how to answer all these questions.
Mm-hmm. So what's the typical size of such a producer? Are these big companies? Are these backyard producers? Who are these guys?
So we say small to medium size. So maybe we have one that is a bit backyard, but that's really the smallest. Most of them are farmers who used to sell to supermarkets and used to sell to chains, but just couldn't succeed. There is a fine line. And again, this is a global problem, that small to medium farmers, and we really discovered it when we searched the whole country for farmers for the farmers market. They can't compete with industrial farmers when it comes to the supermarkets, when it comes to quantities. They just can't. And we as consumers, we lose so many varieties of vegetables and fruit, not to mention freshness. If you think about fresh carrots that comes with the leaves and the leftover ground, you can't find it in a supermarket. You can't. It won't last the refrigeration time, and it will be very sad after 3 days. You almost can't find many varieties of berries in a supermarket because it's too gentle. What's great about the concept of a farmer's market is that everything is being picked the day before or the same in the morning early, and they come and they don't need to stand in criteria of quantities. They sell what they grew. They come to the market in the city, they sell everything, they go back with nothing. So they can be small size, and there is no middleman. It's important to understand that small, medium farmers, when it comes to supermarkets, the middleman takes such a big chunk in this chain that they usually have no choice but to just or become bigger or just leave the business.
So let's talk about money and pricing. So what is the price that a customer would see at the farmer's market? How much does the middleman take? How much does, at the end, the farmer get? And how much does it cost to the customer?
Yes. So the middleman takes a lot. And if I'll take, for example, a berry farmer, and berries are usually expensive. When you find them in a supermarket, they can cost even, I would say, $10 for a little pack after transportation and refrigeration, so it's not that fresh and good. The farmer would get about $1 from that, which is nothing, which will explain to you why he would leave his business. In a farmer's market, when he sells it directly, he will sell it in half the price, okay, like say $5, but the whole $5 goes to him. And you get very wonderful fresh berries. So that's one example of how a farmer's market is a win-win. But I'm sure some of you have been to a farmer's market and they say, but sometimes it's more expensive than the supermarket. And that's true. And let's talk about, let's say, carrots, for example. Carrots in my farmer's market will cost about 3 times more than in a supermarket. 3 times more. So they're much more expensive. But then we have to educate and explain to our client that this is fresh carrot, and the carrot they find in the supermarket today carrots and sweet potatoes can stay in refrigeration of the supermarket up to a year in refrigeration. So the whole cost of production is completely different. So we never say a farmer's market is cheaper. Sometimes it's cheaper and sometimes it's more expensive. I think the best adjective is that we say it's fair, because it's fair to the farmer. And of course it's better. It's by far better for you as a client because you get tasty, fresh produce.
So once you get the system up, the other half is the customer and the customer education.
All right.
Where are we in this process? Because it's obvious if something is better and it's fresher. That's,
yes.
You taste it and you feel the difference. But it's also more deep. You have to understand why it's important that people stay in the business and produce, and why you eat something from 100 kilometers away or 50 kilometers away and not from 5,000 kilometers away.
Right.
And then we don't produce CO2 and all that. So where are we in this process? How do you tackle this? Do you work on this?
So it's a wonderful question. I mean, when we just started, intuitively, something good happened. I remember the first farmer's market. It was about 8 stalls, and we didn't know if it will stay for a week or a month. I couldn't even dream it would stay for 10 years almost. We really didn't know where it would go. And something happened that it was intuitive in the sense that people came, and we are located in the port of the city, and people came with trolleys to buy, first market. And that was like a sign for me that people are looking for a new consumer experience. I think people are a bit tired of the plastic vegetables and fruit that you don't really feel like. I think people miss taste and miss reconnecting to the farmer. So there are some things that we didn't touch. So one of them is that we said no plastic bags in the market, okay? The other thing that happened organically is that we have connections between the farmers and the clients in the sense of there's a new variety of cherry tomato, and the farmer named it after a client. Yeah. Or we have a client, again, cherry tomatoes are a big hit in Israel. We have like 20 varieties. And she took a bunch of cherry tomatoes, she made a jam with chilies, and she brought it back to the farmer. So this is taste education. This is all about community. This is a new way of consumerism. it happened without us touching it. One thing that we do now every year, and this is part of the slow food movement that we are a part of, it started in Italy in the 80s. You can check it out. It has a snail logo, and they do very wonderful things in food. We do discos. We call it disco shuk. It means a market in Hebrew. And we basically do a party where we cook with wasted food, and then we deliver it. I mean, these are parties that are happening all over the world. So this is a conscious thing that we do to make people more aware of food waste. And that's something that is happening all over the world. There's a disco soup in Paris and disco macaroni in Italy, and it's just wonderful, wonderful activity.
That's great. Yeah. And what's the next step? How can you grow this internationally? How can we take something from this here in Hungary, and how can we take this movement ahead? Do you have plans for growing this knowledge, or sharing the knowledge, or growing internationally?
I mean, sharing the knowledge, absolutely. And if you want to start a market here, I'll be your guide, for sure. That's for sure. And in general, these kind of events, when people inspire each other and entrepreneurs inspire each other, I think are wonderful. So definitely markets in our future in Israel and maybe outside of Israel as well. A lot of connections with other entrepreneurs. But also for me, one of the most exciting things now is to see so many startups and new technologies. So it's a mixture of this old farming with the new technology, just to make our food system better and tastier.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If I'm right.